I should have known. The moment my children stopped calling me dad and started asking about the papers. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I trusted them. I loved them. And that love blinded me. Last week, I overheard a conversation in my own kitchen one that changed everything. They weren't talking about me as their father. No, they were talking about me as an obstacle, a signature standing between them and the inheritance they believed they deserved. That was the night I decided I wouldn't let them win, but am getting ahead of myself. My name is John, Grandfather John, to most of you listening, and this is the story of how I used the stars to give my family exactly what they deserved. It started, as the best and worst things often do, with a whisper, not a human whisper, a celestial one. I've been an astronomer, an amateur one, mind you, but a passionate one, for 60 years. The sky, it speaks to me, it tells me its secrets, and that night, it told me the biggest secret of all, my own death. I was out by the old oak tree, my telescope a cold, familiar extension of my own body. The air was crisp, silent, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. I was charting the path of a rare convergence, Saturn, Mars, and the Moon, all lining up, you see. A dance that happens only once every 142 years. A beautiful, precise, and utterly predictable ballet of light and gravity. And as I calculated the final arc, the exact moment of perfect alignment, a coldness settled in my bones. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The math was perfect. The date was clear. The convergence would reach its peak at 9:17 p.m. or October 31st. Halloween. My 85th birthday. The universe has a sense of humor. I'll give it that. A cruel, precise, and impeccable sense of timing. I knew it right then, in my soul. This alignment wasn't just an astronomical event. It was a deadline. My deadline. I felt my hands shaking as I pulled them from the eyepiece. The metal was ice cold. Or maybe that was just me. I should have felt fear, panic, dread. But you know what I felt? Relief. A strange, settling calm. Because now I knew. And knowing his power, I walked back into the house, my slippers scuffing on the polished floor. The family home. A grand, old, empty mansion filled with nothing but the ghosts of my late wife's laughter and the creeping, greedy silence of my waiting heirs. I could hear them then, from the kitchen. My son, Thomas, and his wife, Lydia. Their voices were low, but the house carries sound like a confessional. "He's been out there 4 hours," Lydia hissed, "probably talking to the stupid planets again." "It's not natural, Tom. A man his age, it keeps him quiet," Thomas replied, his voice a bored grumble. "And out of the way. Let him have his hobbies. The lawyers have the paperwork. The trust is solid. We just have to be patient." Patient. That word. It hung in the air, thick and ugly. They weren't being patient. They were waiting, like vultures on a telephone wire, watching a wounded animal stumble through the desert below. I felt my heart crack then. Not break. Crack. Like old porcelain. Something precious, damaged, but not destroyed. Not yet. That crack let something new in. A resolve, cold and hard as diamond. They wanted an inheritance. It'd give them one, but not the one they were expecting. The plan formed in my mind, fully realized, as if the stars themselves had whispered it into my ear. The convergence. My death. Their greed. It was all a perfect alignment of its own, and I knew just who to aim it at. Clara, my youngest, the most avaricious of them all, the one who'd already picked out the chandelier from the dining room for her summer home, the one who'd asked me, just last month, if he'd considered the tax implications of holding on to the beach property. Her birthday was October 30th, the day before the convergence, the day before my appointed end. She was planning a party, a huge, garish, expensive spectacle, to show off to all her friends, to show off her impending wealth. She'd even had the gall to ask me to pay for it. I'd said yes. Oh, I'd said yes to everything, because I had a different party in mind for her. The next morning, I called a family meeting, said I had important news about the estate. You've never seen them all gathered so quickly. They descended on this old house like a flock of well-dressed piranhas. They were all here. Thomas, with his perpetual frown, already mentally spending the money. His wife, Lydia, her eyes darting around the room, cataloguing every antique and heirloom. Michael, the sensitive one, who thought his poetry excused him from having a real job, looking bored. His wife, Sarah, nervously twisting her napkin. And Clara, my beautiful, vicious Clara, dressed in black, already in mourning for my bank account. We sat in the grand living room. Sunlight streamed in, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. They looked like tiny, frantic stars. I stood before them, leaning on my cane for effect. I let the silence stretch, let them sweat. "I've gathered you all here," I began, my voice a little raspy. I made sure it sounded weak. Because I've seen something. Clara sighed dramatically. "Dad, not the northern lights again. We told you. That was just a reflection from not the lights," I interrupted, my voice gaining a sliver of steel. I looked at each of them, met their greedy, impatient eyes. "If read the stars," Michael snorted into his tea. "For God's sake, Father, are we in the Middle Ages? Next you'll be sacrificing a goat." I ignored him. I looked right at Clara. She was smirking, examining her perfect, blood-red nails. "There is a convergence coming," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. They all leaned in, despite themselves. A whisper always makes people listen harder. A celestial event of immense rarity. Saturn, Mars, the waning moon. They will align perfectly on a specific night. It is an omen. A powerful and terrible omen. Lydia rolled her eyes. "An omen for what, John?" "A good harvest." "For death," I said. The room went utterly still. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. The smirk vanished from Clara's face. "What are you talking about?" Thomas said, his voice low and serious. The first sign of real interest from him that didn't involve a stock portfolio. "The alignment," I continued, my eyes glazing over as if I was seeing a vision. "I'm rather proud of that bit of acting. It's a harbinger. It signals the end of a life whose destiny is tied to the heavens. I've calculated it, checked and double-checked. The moment of perfect alignment, it coincides with a birth and a death." I paused again. Let it sink in. I saw the calculations going on behind their eyes, the frantic math of greed and fear. "When?" Sarah asked, her voice small and genuinely frightened. Sweet Sarah. She probably thought it was for one of her children. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I looked old. I felt old. I was selling it. "The peak of the alignment," I said, my voice trembling just so, "is at 9:17 p.m. on Halloween night." A collective exhale. Halloween. My birthday. They all knew it. The tension broke, replaced by a different kind of energy. A morbid, thrilling curiosity. "Your birthday," Michael said, a strange look on his face. Was it concern? Or was he just calculating the date of his payday? I nodded slowly, looking down at my hands as if he'd just discovered they were mortal. "It seems my time is not my own. The universe has set its clock. I have until then." The reactions were a symphony of selfishness. Thomas immediately started. "The will. Dad, we need to review the will. There are clauses, contingencies. If you're serious, we need to make sure everything is in order." "Order," meaning his order. Lydia was already reaching for her phone, probably to call her interior designer, to put a hold on the new curtains for the master bedroom, her future master bedroom. But Clara just sat there, staring at me. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, and I knew why. Her party, her big, glorious, pre-inheritance birthday bash, was scheduled for the night of the 30th, the night before the omen, the night before the universe had supposedly scheduled my demise. She saw it before the others did. The potential for bad taste, the horrific optics, throwing a lavish party for herself, and then her father dropping dead the very next day. The society pages would eat her alive. The whispers would follow her forever. The woman who danced on her father's grave before he was even in it. She stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice shrill. "You can't be serious. You're going to sit there and tell us you've got her a stargazer's expiration date. It's nonsense. Superstitious nonsense. I looked at her, my expression one of sad resignation. I wish it were, my dear. I truly do. The stars don't lie. They are indifferent. They simply are. And they are telling me my journey ends on that night. But my party, she wailed, and it was the most honest thing she had said in years. It's all planned. The caterers, the band, the tent. Everyone is coming. I can't just cancel. The room went quiet again. All eyes turned to her. Even her siblings were stunned by the sheer, naked audacity of it. Our father had just announced his own celestial death sentence, and her first concern was the canapes. Thomas found his voice first, a low growl. Clara, for heaven's sake, show some respect. Respect. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Hayes talking about dying, because he looked at the moon. It's a ploy for attention. Hayes probably senile. That word hung in the air. Senile. The magic word. The word they could use to lock me away and get their hands on everything faster. I saw the idea flicker in Thomas' eyes, in Lydia's. A dangerous spark. I had to quash it. Immediately. I straightened up. I let the frail old man act drop for just a second. My voice became the voice that had built a business empire from nothing. The voice that brooked no argument. I am in possession of all my faculties, Clara, I said. Each word cold and clear as an ice chip. More than I can say for some in this room. I am telling you what I have seen. What I know. You may choose to believe it or not. That is your affair. But I will not be celebrating on the eve of my death. This house will be in mourning. I will be in mourning. For a life soon to be ended. I looked directly at her, my gaze unwavering. Cancel the party, Clara. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. It was a standoff. A declaration of war in a room that smelled of lemon polish and ambition. I will not, she whispered, her fists clenched at her sides. Then, I said, my voice dropping back to that ominous, prophetic whisper, you will be dancing under a cursed sky. The alignment begins on your birthday. Its energy, its malice will already be stirring. To celebrate on such a night, it would be an invitation for misfortune, a permanent stain. The omen would attach itself, not to me but to you. I let the words sink in. I saw the superstitious fear flicker in Lydia's eyes. Sarah gasped softly. Even Thomas looked unsettled. They were modern people. But money makes everyone superstitious. It's too fragile, too fleeting. They'll believe anything that might protect it. Clara looked from their worried faces back to my calm, resolute one. She was isolated, and she knew it. This is bullshit. She screamed, and she grabbed her purse, storming out of the room. The front door slammed shut a moment later, shaking the whole house. The rest of them sat in stunned silence. The revelation was out. The conflict was ignited, and the first part of my plan was a complete success. The weeks that followed were fascinating. A sociologist would have had a field day. My impending doom became the central fact of the household, but it wasn't met with tenderness, or love, or cherished moments. Oh no, it was met with paperwork. Thomas became a constant presence, armed with folders and highlighters and a desperate, hungry look in his eye. Dad, just a signature here. It's a simple transfer. Minimizes the probate, you see. Father, the power of attorney documents. Just a formality, in case you become incapacitated before the event. He said event like it was a board meeting he was late for. Lydia started redecorating my study. She called it freshening up the place. I called it picking the meat from the bones before the carcass was even cold. She'd hold up a vase. This is lovely, John. Clara always admired this, didn't she? Trying to feel out the will, trying to map the contours of my demise. Michael, the poet, surprised me. He started spending more time with me, not out of kindness. He was mining me for material. I'd catch him scribbling in a little notebook, or he'd say something. He thought my delusion was a fascinating psychological breakdown. He was going to write a cycle of poems about it. The old man and the sky. I almost laughed in his face. And Clara, she dug in her heels. She did not cancel her party. The invitations had gone out. The RSVPs were flooding in. It was the talk of the town. The whispers had already started, just as he'd hoped. I'd get calls from old friends, their voices laced with concern and morbid curiosity. "John, is it true? What Clara is saying, that you're unwell? And she's still throwing this spectacle?" I'd lean into it. My voice would get frail. "I've asked her not to, Arthur. I've begged her. But she says the show must go on." It let a tearful pause hang in the air. "I just pray the omen doesn't transfer. I couldn't bear for my little girl to be cursed on my account." I laid it on thick. And it worked. The tide of public opinion was turning against her. She was becoming the villain in my little drama. And she had no idea. She came to see me a week before the party. She didn't call, just showed up, her high heels clicking on the hardwood like gunshots. She was dressed for battle. A sharp, expensive pantsuit, hair perfect, makeup flawless. But her eyes were frantic. She didn't bother with hello. "You have to call them," she demanded, standing over my favorite armchair. I looked up from my book, feigning confusion. "Call who, dear?" "Everyone," she spat. "Your friends. The Andersons, the Fairchilds, the Pressmans. You have to tell them you're fine. That this astrological nonsense was a joke. A misunderstanding." I closed my book slowly. "But it's not a misunderstanding, Clara. I've never been more serious. They're talking about me," she hissed, leaning down, her face close to mine. I could smell her expensive, bitter perfume. "They're saying I'm heartless, that I'm throwing a party, while you," she couldn't even say it, "while I prepare to die." I offered helpfully. "Stop saying that," she shrieked, straightening up and pacing the rug. "You're not dying. You're healthy as a horse. The doctor said so. This is a game. You're trying to ruin this for me. You've always tried to ruin everything for me." I just watched her. This tantrum of a 50-year-old woman. This greedy, frightened child. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said, my voice quiet. "I'm simply telling the truth as I see it. The stars have given me a gift. The gift of foresight. To put my affairs in order. To make my peace. Your peace." She laughed, a wild, humorless sound. "You're causing a war. My friends are dropping out of the party. They're making excuses. They think it's bad luck to come. Because of your stupid story." Ah, there it was. The real problem. Not my health. Not my feelings. Her social standing was taking a hit. That was the only thing that could truly wound her. "Perhaps," I said, looking out the window at the gathering twilight, "they are wiser than you are. Perhaps they understand that some forces are not to be trifled with." She stopped pacing and stared at me, her chest heaving. I saw something new in her eyes then. Not just anger, not just frustration. It was calculation. Cold, hard calculation. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice suddenly flat, devoid of emotion. "I want to spend my last days in peace," I replied. "No," she said, taking a step closer. "What do you want? What will it take for you to pick up the phone and tell everyone you feel fine, that you were mistaken? What's your price?" She thought I was extorting her, that this was all some elaborate scheme to get a bigger birthday present. The arrogance of it took my breath away. I looked at her, truly looked at her, my little girl, the one I'd pushed on a swing in the very oak tree that now held my telescope. Where had she gone? This stranger in my house. "There is no price, Clara," I said. And for a moment, the act dropped, and I was just a tired, heartbroken old man. Some things are not for sale. The mask of negotiation slid from her face, replaced by pure, undiluted hatred. "Fine," she whispered. "You want to play it this way? Fine. The party is going ahead, and you will be there. You will stand there, healthy and alive. And you will smile, and you will laugh, and you will wish me a happy birthday. You will prove to everyone that this is all a lie." I met her gaze. "Or what?" She smiled then. A thin, cruel smile. "Or we'll have you declared incompetent. Thomas and Lydia are already on board. Michael will do whatever we tell him. We'll have you in a home by Thanksgiving, and we'll sell this house and everything in it. You can spend your last days staring at a blank wall instead of your precious stars." The threat hung in the air, real and toxic. She meant it. They all meant it. The vultures weren't just waiting anymore. They were sharpening their beaks. I felt a genuine tremor of fear then. This had escalated beyond my initial plan of simple posthumous revenge. This was now a battle for my freedom, for the last days of my life. I leaned back in my chair, feigning a weakness I no longer felt. I let my hands shake. I looked down, defeated. I will need to think. Clara, I mumbled. She saw my surrender, and her triumph was instant and ugly. Think fast, old man, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. The party is in 6 days. And with that, she turned and left, her victory click-clacking down the hallway. I sat there for a long time after she left. The room grew dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I just watched the stars begin to prick through the velvet of the evening sky. My fear slowly cooled, hardening into a new, more determined resolve. She had made her move. She had shown me her hand. Now it was my turn to play. The game was on, and the stakes were everything. I had to make sure her birthday party was a night she would never, ever forget. A night so tainted by omen and curse that the family would turn on her completely. I had to make my performance on Halloween so convincing, so utterly terrifying, that their threat of a nursing home would vanish in a puff of superstitious fear. But I needed help. I couldn't do it alone. I needed an ally inside the house, and I knew just who to ask. Sarah, Michael's wife, the quiet one, the nervous napkin twister. She was the only one who had looked genuinely afraid that day in the living room. Not for herself, for others. She had a good heart, buried under years of my son's neglect and the family's toxicity. She was also deeply, deeply superstitious. She believed in horoscopes, in bad luck, in signs. She was the perfect candidate. I found her the next morning, alone in the sunroom, trying to read a book. She jumped when I walked in. "John, you startled me." "I'm sorry, my dear," I said, giving her my most grandfatherly smile. I sat down slowly in the wicker chair opposite her. I let the silence sit for a moment. I looked tired. I was tired. "This is all very hard on you, isn't it?" I asked softly. Her eyes immediately welled up with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. She looked so young, so out of place in this den of wolves. "The things they're saying," she whispered, her voice breaking. "About putting you away, it's monstrous." "They're frightened," I said. Not because it was true, but because it was a kind thing to say. Frightened people do monstrous things. But the stars, she looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "John, is it true? What you saw? Are you really?" I didn't answer directly. I looked out at the garden. "The universe is a strange and beautiful place, Sarah. It has patterns, rhythms. Most of us are too busy to notice them. But if you truly listen, it tells you things." A single tear rolled down her cheek. She believed. She absolutely believed. "Clara's party," I began, and she flinched at the name. "She's forcing me to go. To pretend. To defy the very signs I've been given." That's terrible," Sarah breathed. "It's asking for trouble." "I'm afraid," I said. And this was not entirely an act. "I'm afraid of what might happen. Not to me. My path is set. But the energy, the ill will, it has to go somewhere. If I am there, pretending, laughing in the face of this omen, it might splash back. On all of you. On Michael." That did it. It aimed right at her heart. Her husband, feckless as he was her whole world. Her face went pale. "What can we do?" she whispered, leaning forward. "We have to stop her." "We can't stop the party," I said. "But we can prepare. We can try to shield ourselves, to minimize the damage." "How?" she asked, her voice desperate. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I need you to help me with something on the night of the party. A small thing. A ritual of sorts. To protect this house. To protect Michael." Her eyes were wide, hanging on my every word. "A ritual, yes. Well, everyone is at the party. Distracted. I need you to place something for me. In the exact center of the house. A symbol of protection. It's an old astronomer's trick. To ward off celestial malevolence." It was, of course, complete and utter hogwash. But she nodded eagerly, ready to do anything to ward off the evil eye. "What is it?" she asked. "What do I need to place?" I told her. I described a simple, smooth, dark river stone I kept on my desk. I gave it a ridiculous, made-up name. The Sentinel's Heart, I called it. I told her it had to be placed at the stroke of 9 p.m. the time the party would be in full swing. I gave her precise, nonsensical instructions about facing east and saying nothing. She listened, memorizing every detail, her face a mask of solemn responsibility. She was my inside woman, my unknowing accomplice. It was a risk. If she told Michael, it could all fall apart, but I was betting on her fear and her love for her husband overriding everything else. I was betting my freedom on it. The days ticked down. The tension in the house was a physical thing, a thick fog of anticipation and greed. Clara avoided me, but her triumph was evident in every smirk, every phone call she made loudly discussing final party details just outside my study door. Thomas and Lydia were a constant, low-grade hum of legal anxiety. Just initial here, Dad. Just sign this, John. Michael floated through it all, oblivious, scribbling his terrible poetry, and Sarah would catch my eye sometimes and give me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Our secret was safe. The morning of Clara's birthday, October 30th, dawned grey and cold, a fitting day for a funeral, or a party that felt like one. I stayed in my room. I claimed I wasn't feeling well, which was true. The weight of what I was about to do was pressing down on me. This was it, the final act. Clara left early to oversee preparations. The others milled around, waiting for the evening. The house was silent, waiting, as around 4 p.m. there was a knock on my door. It was Thomas. He didn't wait for an answer. He just walked in. He was holding a garment bag. I took the liberty. Dad, he said, his voice cheerful. Had your best tuxedo cleaned and pressed for tonight. He unzipped the bag. There it was. The black penguin suit he'd worn to my wife's funeral. The irony was so thick you could taste it. Clara expects everyone to look their best, he said, hanging it on my closet door. He turned to me, and the fake cheer vanished, replaced by cold command. And so do I. You will be there. You will be pleasant. You will be healthy. Do you understand? No talk of stars. No talk of omens. You will smile, and you will wish your daughter a happy birthday. I just looked at him. My son, my firstborn, reduced to a thug for his sister's social ambitions, or the home. I asked quietly. A flicker of shame crossed his face, but it was quickly smothered. Let's not make it come to that, Dad. Just get dressed. The car leaves at 7. He left, closing the door behind him. I looked at the tuxedo. A costume for my last performance. The hours dragged. I could feel the celestial clock ticking down. The planets were moving into place. Mars, Saturn, the moon, and me. All of us playing our predetermined roles. At 6:30 p.m., I began to get dressed. The fabric felt stiff and foreign against my skin. A shroud. I looked at myself in the mirror. An old man, pale and drawn, swimming in a suit meant for a different man, a different life. I had to sell this. I had to be convincing, not just for the party, but for tomorrow. The grand finale. I heard a car pull up outside. Then another. The guests were arriving at the venue. The party was starting. It was time to go. I took a deep breath. I thought of my wife. I thought of the stars. I found my resolve, cold and sharp in my gut. I walked out of my room, down the grand staircase. Thomas, Lydia, and Michael were waiting in the foyer, already dressed. They looked at me, assessing, judging. Thomas gave a curt, satisfied nod. Good. Let's go. We drove in silence to the country club Clara had rented. The place was lit up like a casino. Valets were scurrying everywhere. The sound of a swing band spilled out into the cold night air. It was a circus. We walked in. The heat and noise hit me like a wall. Hundreds of people, laughing, drinking, shouting, and at the center of it all, holding court, was Clara. She wore a dress of brilliant, shocking scarlet, the color of blood, of warning. She saw us and her eyes locked onto mine. A challenge. She floated over, a glass of champagne in her hand. Father, you came, and you look well. The dig was unmistakable. I am here, I said, my voice neutral. She looped her arm through mine. her grip surprisingly strong. Her nails dug into my arm. Wonderful. Now, let's go make the rounds. I have so many people who want to see how healthy you are. And so it began. The longest night of my life. She paraded me around like a prize bull shed, just proven was not sick. See, doesn't he look great? Dad, tell Mr. Henderson about your golf game. He's been so looking forward to this. I played my part. I smiled a thin, tight smile. I shook hands. I nodded. I said, yes, I'm feeling quite well, thank you. But my eyes were distant. I kept looking at the clock. 8:15, 8:30. Back home, right now. Sarah would be getting ready. She'd claimed a headache, stayed behind. She would be tiptoeing through the silent house, my river stone clutched in her sweaty palm. Getting into position, I had to create a distraction. A big one. Something that would make everyone look at me and confirm their deepest, most superstitious fears. I needed an omen. A small one. A preview of coming attractions. The band took a break. The music stopped. The crowd's chatter rose to fill the void. Clara was holding forth to a group of her friends, her arms still locked in mine. I saw my chance. I let my body go limp. Just for a second. I let my knees buckle. I let out a soft, choked gasp, and then I reached out with my free hand and grabbed the edge of a passing waiter's tray. It wasn't a hard grab, just a brush of my fingers, but it was enough. The tray, laden with full champagne flutes, went flying. It crashed to the floor in a spectacular explosion of glass and sparkling wine. The sound was immense. A shocking, silencing crash. Every conversation in the room died instantly. Hundreds of heads turned. All eyes were on me. I swayed on my feet, my hand going to my chest. I made my eyes go wide, unfocused. I looked not at the mess on the floor but up, towards the ceiling, towards the sky beyond. Clara's grip on my arm tightened to a vice. Father, she hissed, her voice a mixture of panic and fury. What are you doing? I didn't look at her. I kept my gaze upward, my face a mask of terrified awe. I spoke, not loudly, but in the dead silence. My voice carried to every corner of the room. Can't you see it? I whispered, my voice trembling with manufactured terror. The alignment it's starting early. The red eye of Mars it's staring right at us, right at her. I pointed a shaking finger directly at Clara. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It'd done it. It'd planted the seed. The omen wasn't for me. It was for her. The spilled champagne was the portent. My vision was the confirmation. The perfect, beautiful silence was shattered by Clara's scream of pure, undiluted rage, and in that moment, as everyone stared at her in her scarlet dress, standing in the middle of the broken glass, I knew the first part of my revenge was complete. But the night wasn't over yet, not by a long shot, because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have planned for, was what happened next. The sound of that scream, I'll never forget it. It wasn't human. It was the sound of pure, unfiltered fury. The sound of a plan shattering into a million pieces, just like those champagne glasses at her feet. All eyes were on her. Clara in her blood-red dress, standing in the middle of that fizzy, broken mess. And all eyes were on me, my face still frozen in that mask of terrified prophecy. For a second, nobody moved. It was a painting, a tableau of absolute shock. Then the room erupted, not into noise, into a frantic, horrified whisper, a wave of it, crashing from one end of the ballroom to the other. I saw the looks on their faces, the society matrons, the business associates, the so-called friends. Their expressions shifted from amusement to confusion to something else, something dark and superstitious and thrilling. They weren't looking at a clumsy old man anymore. They were looking at a prophet, a harbinger, and they were looking at Clara as the subject of a curse. Clara's face was a terrifying thing to behold. The perfect makeup couldn't hide the purple rage twisting her features. She dropped my arm like it was a venomous snake. She took a step back from me, her eyes wide with a new emotion now, mixed with the anger, raw, primal fear. She believed it. In that moment, staring at the broken glass, hearing my words hang in the air, she believed it. What did you do? She hissed at me, her voice low and venomous, meant only for my ears. but the room was so quiet, everyone heard. I didn't answer. I just kept my gaze slightly off, my breathing a little shallow, selling the vision. Thomas was there in an instant, grabbing my other arm, his grip firm and impersonal. "Dad's not feeling well," he announced to the crowd, his voice too loud, too forced. The excitement too much champagne. "You know how it is." Lydia materialized on my other side, a grotesque parody of concern plastered on her face. "Let's get you some air, John darling." The darling tasted like ash in the air. They started to maneuver me through the crowd, which parted for us like the Red Sea. People pressed back, not wanting to get too close, not wanting whatever was emanating from me to splash onto them. I heard the whispers as we passed. "Did you see his eyes?" He pointed right at her, the red eye of Mars. My God, my horoscope said to avoid conflict today, and on her birthday, what terrible luck. We burst out into the cold night air of the terrace. Thomas practically shoved me into a wrought iron chair. The second we were away from the crowd, the act dropped. His face contorted into a mask of pure fury. "What the hell was that?" he snarled, leaning in close, his breath fogging in the cold air. The alignment," I stammered, keeping up the act. "It's beginning. The energy, it's disruptive, chaotic. I tried to warn you. I tried to warn her. I don't give a damn about your alignment." Thomas roared, losing all composure. "You just humiliated us. You humiliated Clara in front of everyone. Do you have any idea the damage you've done?" Lydia was pacing, her arms wrapped around herself. "The gossip, Thomas, the gossip will be unbearable. Will be a laughingstock. Worse than a laughingstock," a new voice said. Michael had followed us out. He was leaning against the doorframe, looking strangely animated, thrilled. "Hayes made us fascinating. A cursed family. It's brilliant." He pulled out his little notebook and started scribbling. "The poet, capturing the drama." "It's not brilliant, you idiot," Thomas shot back. "It's a disaster." The terrace door flew open again. Clara stood there, silhouetted against the light from the ballroom. The band had started up again inside. A weak, tinny attempt to regain normalcy. But the party was dead. We all knew it. She walked slowly toward me. Her heels clicked on the stone. Click, 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 like a countdown. She stopped in front of my chair. She didn't look at Thomas or Lydia or Michael. She only looked at me. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet, deadly calm, and it was infinitely more frightening than her scream. "You did that on purpose," she said. I looked up at her, letting my old man confusion show. "The tray, it was an accident, Clara." My hand slipped. The vision, it was so strong. "Liar," she whispered. "You're a liar. This is all a lie. A sick, twisted game to punish me. To punish all of us for wanting what's rightfully ours." She leaned down, putting her hands on the arms of my chair, caging me in. Her eyes were pits of darkness. "The game is over, old man. Tomorrow, first thing, the doctor is coming. Not for a checkup, for a competency evaluation. And we will have the papers signed. We will have you declared unfit. And we will lock you away in a place where you can't see any God's damn stars." There it was. The threat made real. The timetable moved up. They weren't waiting for me to die anymore. They were going to actively bury me alive. Thomas and Lydia said nothing. They just stood there. Their silence was their agreement, their approval. Michael just kept scribbling. "Caging the patriarch," he muttered. Good line. I felt a genuine bolt of fear shoot through me. This had escalated faster than it anticipated. My performance had been too good. It backed them into a corner. And a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I had to get through tonight. I had to get to tomorrow. To Halloween. To my finale. If they had me declared incompetent before then, it was all over. I dropped my head into my hands. I made my shoulders shake. I let out a sob. A real one. The fear made it easy. "I'm sorry," I mumbled into my palms. "I'm so sorry, Clara. The stress, the party, it was too much. Please just take me home. I just want to go home." I was giving them an out, a way to save face. The frail, confused old man, overwhelmed by the festivities. It was the only card I had left to play. Clara stared at me for a long, cold moment. I could feel her hatred like a physical force, but she also saw the sense in it, the narrative she could spin later. Poor father, he's become so fragile. The party was too much for him. Was so worried it was a better story than our father publicly cursed me. She straightened up. Fine, she spat. Thomas, take him home. Lydia, Michael, you stay. Well, do damage control. Well, tell everyone Hayes unwell, which, she added, looking back at me, is not entirely a lie. Thomas didn't speak a word to me the entire drive home. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The silence in the car was heavier than any shouting could have been. We pulled up to the dark, silent house. It looked different. It felt different. It felt like a fortress under siege. My fortress. Get inside, Thomas said, his voice flat. I'm going back to the party. We're not done discussing this. He didn't even wait to see me go inside. He just sped off, the tires spitting gravel. I stood alone on the front steps, the cold night air biting through my tuxedo jacket. I was shivering, but not from the cold. I let myself in. The house was dark and still, eerily quiet after the roar of the party. Sarah, I called out softly. No answer. A new thread of anxiety wormed its way into my gut. Had she done it? Had she placed the stone? Or had she lost her nerve? Had Michael found out? I moved through the dark house, my heart pounding. I went to the center of the ground floor, the grand foyer where the twin staircases curved upward, the very heart of the house. I looked down, and there it was, my river stone, the sentinel's heart, placed perfectly in the center of the intricate parquet floor. It was just a stone, but in the dim moonlight filtering through the windows, it looked like something ancient, something powerful. She'd done it. My unknowing accomplice had come through. A wave of relief so powerful, it made me dizzy washed over me. I wasn't alone in this. The plan was still alive. I heard a faint creak from upstairs. I froze. Sarah, I called again, a little louder. A door opened. Michael's study. Sarah emerged, wrapped in a robe, her face pale and anxious in the shadows. John, she whispered, hurrying down the stairs. You're back. Is everything what happened? I heard the car, the party, I said, wearily. There was an incident. Her eyes went wide. The omen. Did it manifest? I nodded slowly, putting a hand on the banister for support. It was disruptive. Clara is very angry. Oh, no. Sarah breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. I knew it. I felt a chill right at 9 o'clock. A real one. That's when I placed the stone. Right on time. I did everything you said. Faced east. Stayed silent. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for reassurance. Did it work? Did we ward it off? I gave her my best wise, weary sage look. We mitigated the damage, Sarah. The full force was directed elsewhere, at the party. But the stone, it protected the house. It protected you. It protected Michael. She sagged with relief. Thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness. I had her. She was utterly convinced. She was my fortress within the fortress. You should go to bed, my dear, I said gently. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a difficult day. She nodded, eager to be away from the tense energy of the foyer. Will you be all right, John? I'll be fine, I said. And for the first time that night, I actually believed it. She padded back up the stairs and disappeared. I was alone again. I picked up the river stone. It was still warm from her hand. I closed my fingers around it. A talisman. A reminder of what I was fighting for. My freedom. My dignity. My revenge. I went to my study and didn't turn on the light. I went straight to the window and looked up. The sky was partly cloudy, but the stars were there. My old friends. Waiting. Saturn, Mars. The waning moon. They were closer now. The dance was nearly complete. Tomorrow, I whispered to them. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in my chair by the window, watching the sky, running over the plan again and again in my mind. Every detail, every possible variable. The family returned around 2 a.m. I heard their cars. I heard their voices, low and angry, in the foyer. They didn't come to check on me. They went straight to their wings of the house. To plot. The night stretched on, long and silent, the longest night of my life. Then, finally, a sliver of light appeared on the horizon. Halloween, my birthday, my death day. The house woke slowly, but I could feel the tension coiling tighter with every passing hour. I stayed in my room. I played my part, the frail, shaken old man, recovering from his spell at the party. At 10 a.m., there was a firm, official knock on the front door. My blood ran cold. I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down. Thomas answered the door. A man in a crisp, serious suit stood there, holding a briefcase. Mr. Thomas Everly. The man said, "Yes, I'm Dr. Evans. I believe you're expecting me." The doctor. The competency evaluation. Clara hadn't been bluffing. They'd moved at lightning speed. Panic threatened to choke me. This was it. This was the checkmate I hadn't seen coming. My grand performance was scheduled for tonight, but they were going to end the show before it began. I saw Clara come out of the dining room, a look of cold satisfaction on her face. Lydia hovered behind her. "Doctor," Clara said, her voice all false warmth. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, come in. My father is upstairs." Hayes had a very difficult night. This was it. I had to think fast. I had to delay. To derail this. I turned and hurried back to my room. I had to look the part. I had to look incompetent. I messed up my hair. I took off my slippers. I spilled a glass of water on my bedside table. I got back into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin, making my eyes wide and unfocused. I heard their footsteps on the stairs. A firm, confident tread the doctor, and the familiar, greedy steps of my children. They didn't knock. Thomas just opened the door. They all filed in. Thomas, Clara, Lydia, and the doctor, a man in his 50s with a kind face, but cool, assessing eyes. "Father," Thomas said, his voice dripping with fake concern, "there's someone here to see you. This is Dr. Evans. He's just going to ask you a few questions." The doctor stepped forward, giving me a professional smile. "Good morning, Mr. Everly. How are we feeling today?" I stared past him, at the wall. I let my lower lip tremble. "The stars," I mumbled. "They're so loud today." Clara rolled her eyes. Thomas shot her a warning look. The doctor's smile didn't falter. He pulled a chair up next to the bed. "The stars, you say? That's interesting. Can you tell me what year it is, Mr. Everly?" I blinked slowly. The year of the convergence. I turned my head and looked right at Clara. The year she was born under a bad sign. A greedy sign. Clara's face flushed. "You see," she said to the doctor, delusional, fixated on this astrological nonsense. "Hayes been like this 4 weeks. The doctor made a note on a clipboard. "I see, Mr. Everly. Do you know where you are?" "The waiting room," I whispered. "The waiting room before the long journey." The doctor asked a few more questions. I answered in riddles, in half-finished astrological babble. I could see him making notes. Disoriented. Fixed delusional ideation. Possible cognitive decline. It was working. I was convincing him I was mad. But that was the problem. I was too convincing. He was going to sign the papers. I was running out of time. I had to do something drastic. The doctor put down his clipboard. "Well, Mr. Everly, thank you for your time. I'd like to speak with the family privately now, if that's all right." This was it. The end. He was going to go downstairs and tell them I was unfit. They'd have the papers signed by lunchtime. I'd be in a facility by nightfall. I'd miss my own death. Despair washed over me. I had lost. But then a miracle. A voice from the doorway. "What's going on in here?" It was Sarah. She was holding a tray with a teapot and cups. Her eyes were wide, taking in the scene, the doctor, his clipboard, my frail state in bed. Clara sighed in exasperation. "It's nothing, Sarah. The doctor is just finishing up. Go back to the kitchen." But Sarah didn't move. She looked at the doctor. Then she looked at me. She saw the genuine panic in my eyes, panic I no longer had to fake. She saw the river stone he'd clutched all night, now sitting plainly on my nightstand. Her own superstitious fear, the genuine belief he'd planted in her, took over. She saw this not as a medical evaluation, but as an attack, a violation of the protective rituals we'd done. She stepped into the room, setting the tray down with a clatter. "You can't do this," she said, her voice shaking but firm. Everyone stared at her. Michael, who had been lurking in the hallway, poked his head in. "Sarah, for God's sake, don't be stupid." "It's not stupid," she cried, turning on him. "Don't you see? You're interfering with it. You're breaking the protection." The doctor looked utterly bewildered. "Protection? The stone," Sarah said, pointing to it. "The sentinel's heart. We placed it to ward off the malevolence, to protect the house. If you declare him incompetent and take him away, the shield will break. The full force of the omen will hit us. It will hit you, Michael. I won't let you." She planted herself between the doctor and my bed, like a mother bear defending her cub. Her entire body was trembling, but her resolve was absolute. Clara laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "Oh, wonderful. Now she's crazy too. Doctor, you see what we're dealing with." But the doctor wasn't looking at Clara. He was looking at Sarah's terrified, utterly sincere face. He was looking at the strange stone on the knitstand. He was looking back at me, at my delusional ramblings about stars. A slow dawning of understanding or misunderstanding spread across his face. He wasn't seeing a medical condition anymore. He was seeing a family, a deeply superstitious, deeply dysfunctional family in the throes of a shared paranoid fantasy. He closed his clipboard with a definitive snap. "Mr. Everly," he said, his voice now carefully neutral, "I think, given the circumstances, it would be prudent to postpone this evaluation." Thomas sputtered. "Postpone? Doctor, we have the papers ready. We need this done today." "What circumstances?" Clara demanded. "She's hysterical. She's been listening to his nonsense." The doctor stood up, picking up his briefcase. He looked at all of them with a new, professional distance. "My recommendation is to let Mr. Everly rest today. It's his birthday, is it not? Perhaps the stress of the recent days has been overwhelming for everyone. I will return next week to reassess. When the astrological event has passed." He was humoring us. He was backing away from the crazy as fast as he could. He wanted no part of it. He gave a curt nod and practically fled the room. We heard his hurried footsteps on the stairs and the front door closing a moment later. Silence. They had lost. Sarah's unexpected, fervent defense had thrown a wrench into their entire scheme. They stared at her, too stunned to even speak. Sarah was still breathing heavily, her hands clenched into fists. I looked from their shocked faces to Sarah's determined one. The balance of power had just shifted. I had an ally, a real one. I allowed myself a small, internal smile. The doctor was gone. The evaluation was postponed. The stage was clear. The show was back on, and it started tonight. But the silence in that room, it wasn't relief. It was the calm before the storm. And the look on Clara's face, it wasn't defeat. It was a promise of war. That silence after the doctor left, it was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was filled with the shattering of their plans and the dawning of their rage. They all just stood there in my bedroom, staring at Sarah. Sarah, who was still trembling, her chest heaving, a wild look in her eyes. She had no idea what she'd really done. She thought she'd saved us from a celestial curse. In reality, she'd saved me from a padded cell. Clara was the first to break. She took a step towards Sarah, her movement slow, predatory. "You stupid, superstitious little fool," she whispered, her voice like ground glass. "What have you done?" Michael finally found his voice, but it wasn't to defend his wife. He looked at her with a kind of horrified fascination. "A sentinel's heart. Sarah, what in God's name are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?" Sarah flinched, her courage starting to crack under the combined weight of their contempt. "He told me John said it was for protection from the omen Hayes playing you." Thomas roared, finally finding his voice. He slammed his fist against the door frame, making everyone jump. "Hayes playing all of us. There is no omen. There is no curse. Hayes a sick, manipulative old man, and you're falling for it." He turned his fury on me. "This ends today. Doctor or no doctor, you will sign the papers. You will do it now. Also help me." "I will." "You will what, Thomas?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it stopped in cold. The frail old man was gone. I sat up in bed, pushing the covers back. The pretense was over. The time for a hiding was done. You will force my hand. You will drag me to the desk. How will that look in the court documents? Son manhandles elderly. Confused father on his birthday. I'm sure the judge will find that very compelling. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. The others just watched, stunned by the sudden shift. I was no longer the victim. I was the patriarch again. The one who'd built the empire they were so desperate to loot. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up. I was still in my pajamas, but I drew myself to my full height. I looked at each of them in turn. Thomas, purple with rage. Clara, white with a hatred, so pure, it was almost beautiful. Lydia, calculating, her eyes darting, looking for a new angle. Michael, just confused, his little world view shaken. And Sarah, poor, terrified, wonderful Sarah. She looked at me, and I saw the first flicker of doubt in her eyes. She was starting to see the man behind the curtain. The doctor is gone, I said, my voice calm, steady. On my advice, he will not be returning. Today is Halloween. It is my birthday, and you will all, every single one of you, will grant me this one day. You will leave me in peace. You will not mention papers. You will not mention doctors. You will not mention incompetence. And why would we do that? Clara spat. Because, I said, a cold smile touching my lips, because tonight, at 9:17 p.m., the convergence reaches its peak. The omen will be fulfilled. And if you have angered me, if you have crossed me, that malevolent energy might just stick to you. Permanently. I was doubling down, leveraging their own greed and superstitious fear against them. It was a desperate gamble, but it was all I had. I'm done listening to this, Thomas snarled, but there was less conviction in his voice now. The seed of doubt was planted. Get out, I said, my voice low and full of command. All of you, get out of my room. To my utter astonishment they did. They turned and filed out, one by one. Even Thomas, after a final, furious glare, turned and left. Sarah was the last to go, throwing a confused, hurt look over her shoulder before closing the door. I was alone. I sank back onto the bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. It won the battle, but the war was tonight, and it would be fought with telescopes and timers, with lies and the darkest of family secrets. The day passed in an eerie, tense quiet. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I stayed in my room. I heard nothing from them. No footsteps, no whispers, no slamming doors. It was the most peaceful, most terrifying day of my life. I spent the hours preparing. I set up my telescope on the balcony of my room, carefully aiming it for the precise patch of sky where the convergence would occur. I checked and rechecked my calculations. 9:17 p.m. I set the timer on my old pocket watch, the one my own father had given me. My props were simple. A small, remote-controlled speaker he'd ordered weeks ago and hidden in the air vents in the living room, a vial of stage blood cherry syrup and red food coloring tucked into my pocket, and my own acting skills, honed over a lifetime of business negotiations and, more recently, this elaborate performance. As dusk began to fall, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, there was a soft knock on my door. It was Sarah. She came in, holding a small cupcake with a single candle on it. Her eyes were red from crying. "Happy birthday, John," she said softly, her voice thick. The gesture was so genuine, so at odds with the venom of the others, that it nearly broke me. "Sarah," I began, but I didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry I used your superstitions against you. I'm sorry I'm about to tear this family apart. I don't understand what's happening," she whispered, setting the cupcake on my dresser. The candle flickered. "I'm so scared. Michael won't talk to me. They're all downstairs, they're talking about you. Terrible things." "I know," I said, my voice gentle. "But after tonight, things will be different. I promise." "Is it true?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "What you said about the stars? Or was Thomas right? Is it all a game?" I looked at her good, honest heart, so lost in this den of wolves. I couldn't tell her the whole truth. But I couldn't lie to her outright anymore. The stars are real, Sarah, I said. The alignment is real. What it means, that's up to us to decide. It was the best I could do. She nodded slowly, not understanding, but accepting it. What should I do? She asked. Stay in your room tonight, I said. Lock the door. Don't come out. No matter what you hear. Promise me. She looked frightened, but she promised. She left me then, the cupcake sitting alone on the dresser, its tiny flame guttering out. The final hour was upon me. I got dressed, not in a suit, but in my best robe, the one Evelyn, my wife, had given me. It felt right. I pocketed the vial and the remote. I checked the timer. 8:45 p.m. It was time. I walked out of my room and down the stairs. My steps were slow, deliberate. I was heading for my final stage, the living room. They were all there, just as Sarah had said. They'd been drinking. The air was thick with tension and expensive scotch. They fell silent when I entered. Thomas was standing by the fireplace. Clara was perched on the edge of an armchair, looking like a hawk ready to strike. Lydia was on the sofa, and Michael was pouring himself another drink at the sidebar. Well, look who decided to join us, Clara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The man of the hour, the birthday boy. I ignored her. I walked to the center of the room. I looked old. I felt old, but I also felt a strange, powerful calm. I've asked you all here, I began, my voice echoing slightly in the large room, because my time is short. The convergence is minutes away. Thomas snorted. For God's sake, Dad, give it a rest. I have something to say, I continued, as if he hadn't spoken. And you will listen. I had their attention. Even if it was hateful, mocking attention, I had it. I have watched you, I said, looking at each of them. I have watched you circle me. I have watched you measure the curtains and count the silver. I have heard you whisper about my will, my trusts, my properties. You haven't seen a father. You've seen a bank account waiting to be closed. This is pathetic, Clara muttered, but she didn't look away. You are my children, I said, and my voice cracked with a genuine emotion I hadn't expected to feel. Grief. I loved you. I held you when you were small. I cheered for you. I believed in you. And you have become this. Vultures, waiting for the feast. You made us this way. Thomas suddenly shouted, slamming his glass down on the mantelpiece. You and your money. Your control. You dangled it in front of us our whole lives. You taught us that love was conditional on performance, on success. You taught us to want it, to need it. There was a shocking truth in his words, a truth I had never wanted to face. Had I created this monster, had my own ambition, my own neglect, forged these greedy, hungry creatures? The timer in my pocket vibrated. 9:16 p.m. 1 minute. It was time for the final act. There was no going back. I swayed on my feet. I brought my hand to my chest. The performance of a lifetime. It's beginning, I gasped, my eyes widening. The alignment, can't you feel it? I stumbled backward, toward the French doors that led to the garden. The night was perfectly clear. The stars were brilliant. Oh, I whispered, my voice full of awe and terror. I can see it, the red eye of Mars, it's looking right at me. I fumbled in my pocket, my hands shaking. I palmed the vial of stage blood and brought it to my lips, pretending to cough, to gasp for air. I bit into the capsule. The sickly sweet syrup filled my mouth. I let out a choked, guttural sound, and then I pitched forward, falling to my knees. I convulsed once, twice for effect. Then I collapsed onto the Persian rug. A trickle of blood, the red syrup, spilled from the corner of my mouth. I lay perfectly still. I held my breath. For a moment, there was nothing, just the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. Then, oh my God, it was Lydia's voice, a high, strangled whisper. Is he, Michael, father, Thomas? His voice was closer. He was standing over me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then a laugh, a cold, brittle, horrible laugh. It was Clara. Oh, very good, she said, her voice clinking with amusement. A nice touch with the blood, Dad. Really dramatic. You almost had me for a second. Clara, for Christ's sake, show some respect. Thomas barked. Respect? For this, she sneered. Look at him. It's another performance. Another trick. Hayes faking. Hayes probably timing it with his stupid watch. She walked over and, before anyone could stop her, she kicked me. Hard. In the ribs. The pain was explosive, shocking. I couldn't help it. I grunted. A short, sharp exhalation of air. A dead man doesn't grunt. The room went dead silent. Then Clara let out a triumphant, venomous shriek. I knew it. You see, Hayes faking. It's all a lie. The jig was up. Shed called my bluff. The hatred in her voice was absolute. She had won. She had exposed me. But she'd forgotten one thing. The remote in my pocket. As she stood over me, gloating, her victory assured, I pressed the button, and from the air vent in the corner of the room, a sound began to play from the hidden speaker. It was my voice, but not my voice as it was now. It was my voice from weeks ago, recorded in my study, clear and strong and full of grim purpose. If you are hearing this, the recording began, then the alignment is complete. The omen has been fulfilled, and I am dead. The effect was electric. Clara's smirk vanished. Thomas jerked back as if struck. Lydia let out a small scream. Michael dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, but I did not die of natural causes. My recorded voice continued, echoing eerily in the silent room. I was murdered by the greed and hatred that has poisoned this family. They were frozen, statues of guilt and shock, and I know which one of you did it. The recording paused. The silence was heavier than any sound. Clara found her voice first. It's a trick. It's another one of his tricks. Hayes not dead. Hayes lying on the floor. But the others weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at each other. With suspicion. With fear. The seeds of paranoia, planted weeks ago, were now bursting into full, poisonous bloom. The stars told me many things. The recording went on. They showed me the face of my killer. The one whose heart is blackest with avarice. The one who could not wait. The one who celebrated my impending death with a party. All eyes turned to Clara. Her face was a mask of horror. No, she screamed. Hayes framing me. It's not true. The omen was never for me. My voice intoned. It was a warning. A warning about her. Clara, my daughter, my murderer. That was the final twist. The masterstroke. I wasn't just faking my death. I was framing my framer. I was using their superstition to turn them against their own. You bitch. Thomas roared, turning on Clara. All his frustration and rage now finding a new target. You couldn't wait. You had to push him. What did you do? I didn't do anything. Clara shrieked, backing away from him, her eyes wild. Hayes lying. Can't you see? Hayes lying on the floor. Hayes breathing. But they weren't listening. The recording. The blood. The timing. It was too perfect. It was the proof their superstitious, greedy hearts needed. Lydia was pointing a trembling finger at Clara. You always were the most greedy. You asked about the will just last week. We all asked about the will. Clara cried, desperate now. But you're the one he named. Thomas yelled. The stars, he said, the omen was for you. He pointed at you. The family was tearing itself apart. Right over my dead body. It was working. It was actually working. And then, the recording delivered its final line. The line it saved for this exact moment. And so, my recorded voice said, with grim finality, I have made arrangements. My last will and testament has been changed. As of this moment, my entire estate, everything is void. It will all be sold. The proceeds will go to the university's astronomy department. My true family. The one that always looked up and never down. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. I'd taken it all away. Every last penny. The house, the money, the properties, the investments. Gone. Vanished into thin air, along with my last breath. Their inheritance. The thing they had lusted after, plotted for, hoped I would die for was gone. The shock was so total, so complete, that for a full 10 seconds, no one made a sound. Then Clara let out a sound that was half sob, half scream of pure rage. She launched herself not at me, but at Thomas. This is your fault, she screamed, clawing at his face. You and your delays, your lawyers, If we'd moved faster. Thomas shoved her back, hard. My fault. You're the one he accused of killing him. You lunatic. Lydia was just repeating. It's all gone over and over like a mantra. Michael sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. The poetry of it, he mumbled. The beautiful, terrible poetry. The room erupted into chaos. A screaming, crying, blaming maelstrom of greed and regret. They were destroying each other, right in front of me. I had done it. I had won. I waited another minute, letting the chaos reach its peak. Then, slowly, I opened my eyes. I sat up. The movement was slow, deliberate. The blood was still on my chin. The fighting stopped. One by one, they turned and saw me, sitting up on the rug, very much alive. The looks on their faces, I wish I had a camera. It was a beautiful, horrible mosaic of shock, confusion, dawning horror, and utter humiliation. Clara was the first to speak. Her voice was a dry, broken rasp. I said, wiping the syrup from my mouth with my sleeve. I am very much alive. The stars, it seems, were mistaken. I got to my feet. I looked at the ruins of my family, the shattered, greedy, broken pieces. The recording, however, was not mistaken, I said, my voice cold and clear. My will has been changed. You get nothing, not a penny, not a paperclip. The lawyers have the documents. They are ironclad. You spent so much time worrying about the inheritance, you forgot to earn it. Thomas took a step toward me. His face was a blank, terrible mask. You ruined us. No, I said softly. You ruined yourselves. I just gave you the stage. I walked past them, past their stunned, broken silence. I walked to the French doors and opened them. The cold night air was clean. The stars were brilliant. The convergence was over. The dance was done. I heard a sound behind me. Clara, sinking to the floor, beginning to sob. Not for me, not for what she'd lost, but for herself, for her humiliation. I didn't look back. I walked out into the garden, toward my telescope, toward the stars that had been my accomplices. I had gotten my revenge. It was colder than I thought it would be, and emptier, but it was justice, of a kind. I heard a car start, then another. Doors slamming. They were leaving. There was nothing left for them here. I was alone. I put my eye to the telescope. Saturn's rings were perfect. Mars was a bright, steady red pinprick. The moon was a sharp, cold sliver. The stars don't lie. But I do. And I had never lied better. That was 6 months ago. The house is quiet now. I sold it, just like I said I would. Gave the money to the stars. I live in a small cottage now, by the sea. My telescope is here. The view is good. The family, they're gone. Thomas and Lydia moved to another state. I heard they're drowning in debt. Michael left Sarah. He's trying to sell his cursed family poetry. No takers yet. And Clara, she's still here, in town. She's a pariah. The woman who celebrated while her father was dying. The woman who killed him for an inheritance she never got. The story stuck. People crossed the street to avoid her. The omen, it did cling to her, just not the way she thought it would. Sarah, she comes to visit sometimes. She's filed for divorce. She's free of them. We don't talk about that night. We drink tea and look at the sea. I think she knows. I think she understands. I gave her her life back. So that's my story. The story of Grandfather John, the man who used the sky to bring his family down to earth. Was it cruel? Maybe. Was it justice? I think so. They wanted an inheritance. And in the end, I gave them one. I gave them a story. A warning. A tale of greed that will follow their name for generations. And me. I got my freedom, my peace, and my stars. The stars don't lie. But I do. And I'd do it all again. So look up at the sky tonight. Think of me. And remember, the greatest forces in the universe aren't out there. They're right here, in the human heart. And they can be terrifyingly predictable. Good night.